Games are often released in a poor or unfinished state, but why would you release it if it's broken? Drop me a line down in the comments below, but first, my opinion. I'm Tarmac, and this is Feature Creep. Have you ever been wrong when someone asks how long it'll be until you show up to a friend's place, restaurant, or any other such outing? Unless you're in the minority of perfect humans, chances are you'd answer that question with a yes. Whether early or late, we all make mistakes when estimating how long something will take. And the game industry has no magic bullet to stop this problem. In fact, in many ways, it's actually worse. So, the follow-up question, have you ever wondered why a game didn't get delayed, or played a beta test that felt complete only to have the game actually get delayed instead? Something like Street Fighter V, for example, was obviously an unfinished piece of software, even by the developer's own admission that some things weren't ready. Hitman, a much more topical piece, was initially supposed to release in December 2015, and as a completed full experience. It was delayed amid development issues, and according to IO Interactive, this delay was in order to add more launch content to the game, quote, more than we had originally planned, end quote. And we know now, looking back in time at the Hitman release, that this isn't exactly how things turned out in the end. The game industry operates on the concept of milestones. This is a basic project management tool. A milestone is an objective target in project management. To keep it topical to the game industry, let's use the beta build as an example. And this may piss you off because you'll notice the game industry often doesn't use the term beta correctly anymore. A beta build of software means that the product is content complete. No new features, no new assets, bug fixing only. This is a milestone. It's objective. Easy to define as a step in the process of making a video game. At some point, you've got to say our game has all the things it needs and we're ready to lock it down. Now, I've been in plenty of beta tests where features were added later, but with games as a service, this model is getting more blurry as time goes on. But these objective defined steps are how development companies get paid, and how your progress as a developer is measured by management, or the publisher who gave your company the money to make the game in the first place. So, let's say that you're independently wealthy. For some reason, you have $50 million sitting around and you want to make some more money. Well, you can put that money into a savings account, getting a whole generous these days 1% interest compounding monthly for 4 years. You'll make an extra $2 million over that 4 years by not touching the money. Not exactly a good financial decision, but it's safe. So you decide to be a bit more risky and you find a game developer with a good pedigree. You're not going to just give them your $50 million, you're going to give them maybe $35 million, saving $10 million for marketing. And you're going to make some rules. Rules like, I want the game to be done in 4 years. I'm only going to give you a little bit the first year, a bit more in the second, more in the third, and so on. And if the game gets good ratings and sells really well, I'll give an extra $5 million to you as a bonus. Now, the point of this isn't for you to remember any of those numbers, just to put you in the investor's shoes. You might even want the game to be really great, but you are putting $50 million on the line here, and if the game doesn't sell well, you might have just made the worst investment decision of your life. So you put down more rules. You negotiate with the developer by going over their plans, setting down milestones, those objective ways the developer can prove to you how far along the project is, how close to being done, and how well it's sticking to the original plan. The developer is going to tell you what features they think are reasonable, and if they think they can complete the game in the time that you want. You're only willing to have your money invested for 4 years, remember. The developer gets to work on your project. You schedule regular meetings to keep tabs on them, make sure they're doing well and getting the work done. And then it happens. They blow the prototype milestone by 4 weeks. Things were not going all that well. The programming team had some people off sick, and others were doing what they could, but they just couldn't get their code locked in time. 4 weeks is not a lot, and it's early in the project, so there's no need to panic just yet. Now remember, you negotiated the original product plan. You included tolerances, like any good project manager does, to account for the risk or potential for something going wrong. Let's say over a 4-year project, you included 3 months worth of time tolerance. You'd also have a money tolerance as well, but I'm keeping this simple. You knew the original release date target and have it all planned out right from the start. But now, crap, instead of being done 3 months before the release date per your time tolerance, now it's 2 months from the release date that the game will need to be ready. Suddenly, you've got fewer mistakes that can be made. Part of game development is marketing, so because you know when the game is being released, you also know when you need to start marketing it. So a year or two out, you start making those marketing plans. How much are you going to spend on ads? How much on sponsoring Twitch streamers? How much on the launch week tournament, etc. About 6 months to a year out, you're starting to sign the contracts for all of those marketing costs. You're buying millions of impressions worth of TV ads, and you're buying in advance because you want the good spots. Plan to roll out exactly as you want, instead of what you can buy at the last minute after everything else is full. And they want part of their money up front to lock in those ad spots. But during development, we had a few more milestones that didn't exactly arrive when they were supposed to. We're already a month behind, but we had another 6 or 7 weeks of time in that 4-year period where deadlines didn't quite match up. We've only got a week of tolerance left. Any more and we'll have to delay the game because it won't be finished. The beta test goes out, gamers are pre-ordering so that they can get in, they report a ton of bugs, and unfortunately, like many organizations, the QA team that doesn't directly deliver a product didn't exactly get the big human resources budget. So now you've got a boatload of bugs to fix, your programmers are burning out because they've been running on 60 to 80 hour weeks for the last month in crunch, and it's apparent that the game is simply going to have to release with a bunch of bugs that might have to be fixed later. You could delay it though, right? Well, sure, but you've already spent most of your marketing budget by now. The game is due out in a few weeks. You could cancel any ad contracts that haven't started, but they all have very lucrative termination clauses for the ad agencies. You got to pay them some anyways. It's too late. If you just delay the game by 2 or 3 weeks, you've got to pony up a bunch more money to keep the marketing campaign going. Otherwise, a bunch of customers will forget about the game because there's a gap. And because this is last-minute ad purchasing, it's also more expensive. Having the marketing stop a few weeks or a month before release isn't going to help anybody. So, you swallow your pride, you tell your devs to swallow theirs, and the game releases as a buggy product. Because by this point, you've got nearly $50 million spent, your account is a little low, and you need to start recouping as much as possible. If not, hopefully still make a profit at the end of it all. Stressful, yeah? It's easy to delay a project early in development, but not so much at the end. The thing about project management is that there's a reason that people who do it well get paid enormous amounts of money, and there's a reason why things like construction projects are the bread and butter of the project management courses you'll see out in the wild, because they're easier to teach. Any building construction has extremely well-defined steps to completion. An artistic product, on the other hand, is much more prone to poor estimates. This is also why feature creep in games is such a big deal, but in physical construction not so much. Generally, once the building plans have been made, they don't change a lot unless you've got a schizophrenic designer who maintains way too much control over the project. And it's really hard to add another underground level after the foundation has been poured. In games, though, a new feature could be so simple to implement. The consequences not exactly planned for, and not showing up until later in production. The point being that there are a lot of reasons why game release dates are set the way that they are, but the primary one above all else is where the money came from in the first place and when they're expecting that return on investment. They have to estimate years in advance that gamers will still buy this type of game in droves when it comes out. Why do you think that yearly franchises are so popular? Same or similar engines, steady metrics on how popular a game genre is from start to finish. It allows them to see the decline more readily and cut the legs out from under the franchise before it starts to actually lose money. And as much as it's popular to hate the big money sources, i.e. AAA publishers, nobody's going to put millions into a game unless they have a good chance of getting millions plus some extra for their trouble. They could just as easily invest it in real property or other financial instruments. This, you can be sure, is what happened to Hitman with IO Interactive. That announcement we got in September 2015 that Hitman was going to miss its December release date and instead release in March 2016 had nothing to do with adding extra launch content. It was Square Enix making the decision to scrap a portion of the marketing budget, under penalty of contract termination of course, and to give IO Interactive about 5 months to rebuild the game experience. They'll have removed the unfinished maps, spent time polishing the tutorial and Paris maps, remove all mentions of future content, and make sure the online functionality worked. And of course, part of the reason the game didn't have a great marketing budget was because they already spent a bunch of it on cancelled contracts. If I was a betting man, and I am, I think this is also probably what happened to Titanfall 2. Electronic Arts CEO Andrew Wilson did his best to spin it by saying that there are plenty of FPS players who want a varied experience, and thus it and Battlefield 1 could both do well alongside Call of Duty Infinite Warfare launching at the same time. Now, it is possible that EA was doing this as an offensive move to try to hurt Activision, but the notion that a company without market dominance in a particular genre would put harming the competitor over their own self-generated profits is a bit silly to me. I think it's just as likely that Titanfall 2 got delayed. Coming out with the first in the series to have a single-player campaign and attempting to compete for the action shooter title with COD doesn't make sense except for a narcissist. EA only had 2 shooters, not counting Garden Warfare, coming out in 2016, and planning them both within a week of each other simply doesn't make sense. Now, I can't say any of that with any veracity, and the producer of the game was quite vocal about the release date being locked in a long time ago, but as we've discussed so far in this video, in project management with multi-million-dollar projects over anywhere from 2 to 6 years, the development timeline for most games, there's no such thing as a locked-in release date a long time ago. There's only a target and a time tolerance, and as you get closer to the target, you can narrow in on what the actual release date is. And you'll notice that for the most part, games don't tend to get release dates more than about 6 months out from release, at least publicly. They'll talk in quarters or seasons, but an actual date indicates serious confidence because to be wrong means all of your marketing is wrong. And some of these games spend as much on marketing as they do on development. This is also, in my opinion, why games as a service and day one patches have been causing so many problems for gamers over the last few years. They blur the line between beta and gold masters. Gold is when you send the final build to the manufacturer for pressing retail discs. If you have a month to build a patch that will go out on the release day, then you can press a less stellar gold build of your game because you can just fix it later. Sometimes later never comes, especially with the pre-launch crunch burnout and developers demanding vacation time after a game releases. And at the end of the day, the decision to delay a game is often far more costly than releasing it in a buggy state, not just in human work hour cost, but also significant marketing budget waste. What do you think about game releases? Should we continue to see teasers months and years out, with release dates often known 6 months in advance? Or is it better to be surprised by a release coming in just a few weeks? Let's chat about it down in the comments. This topic was suggested by Demotivated from Patreon. For clarity, I had put down a Patreon tier which allows for the suggestion of a topic, and that's what this is. I still have to think the topic's good to discuss, and I'm very clear about avoiding topics from anyone who works in the game industry, but I do like the idea of being able to do more videos that people tell me they want to see. Well, so long as the channel is small and I have the time, that is. Thanks for watching. That's all I have to say. Tarmac out.